Philippians. Some of you may remember that I got my master's in Old Testament from a place called Dallas Seminary in Dallas, Texas. I graduated there in 1982 with this degree in Hebrew and Old Testament. And as thankful as I am that I was able to do that in 1982, it's possible that time, that opportunity would have not happened had something that did happen in 1924 not happened. And it was a crisis, and a crisis that was handled and dealt with. In 1924, Dallas Seminary, not long after the founding in 24, they were facing bankruptcy. And so all of the leadership of the seminary got together in the president's office, and they began to pray about the Lord answering their prayers to provide, because if the exact amount of money didn't come in by a certain time on this particular day, then the creditors were going to foreclose on the school. And then that would be it. Dallas Seminary would be no more. I wouldn't have graduated in 1982 because, well, it would have been shut down, decades before, and who would have ever heard of them? It would have been totally forgotten. So on this particular morning that the foreclosure was about to take place at noon, there was a group of these guys that get together in the president's office, and there was one of the particular leaders that got together. His name was Harry Ironside. Some of you may have seen his commentaries. Been gone a long time, but Harry Ironside prayed this prayer. He said, "Lord, we know that the cattle on 1,000 hills are yours. Please sell some and send us the money." Well, we might as well just get right to it, sure? Just cut to the chase. You got a bunch of them, sell a few, we need them. Well, while they were praying, this big, tall Texan cattle rancher came into the office at the seminary there, and he told the secretary these words: "I just sold 2 carloads of cattle in Fort Worth. I've been trying to make a business deal go through, and it won't work. And I feel that God is compelling me to give this money to the seminary. I don't know if you need it or not, but here's the check." So the secretary took the check, timidly knocked on the door of the president's office where Harry Ironside had just prayed, "Lord, we need some money. And if you don't mind selling a few of the cattle that you own, it sure would be helpful." She's knocking timidly on the door, and Louis Berry Schaefer, who was the president, opened the door. She handed him the check. He walks back in the room, and he said, "Harry, God sold the cattle." And the money was for the exact amount they needed to avoid the foreclosure. Interesting, isn't it, how the Lord comes through? Sometimes you are called to live beyond your means, meaning you don't have what you need to do what you have to do in the moment that you're facing some kind of crisis. Now, often when you hear the term living beyond your means, it is defined by you bought the car you shouldn't have bought, you're in a house you shouldn't be in, you're spending more money than you've got, you're stretching yourself way out beyond your means. But I want to kind of play on that in a way. Living beyond your means typically is a bad thing. It's not wise, it's not prudent, but I want to kind of play on those words and switch it around a little bit and ask the question, how do we live beyond our spiritual means? How do we go beyond what we have to do and get it done? How do we face those bankruptcies, if you will, those places in our lives where we find ourselves saying, I don't know how to get through this. I can't get over this. I can't do this. It's not possible for me to do this. If you would, take your Bibles and go with me to Philippians chapter 4. And we've looked at 2 different passages over the last few weeks and how Paul was showing us how to let things go, how to trust God for what we can't do with what we don't have. And in Philippians chapter 4, verse 10, Paul goes on to say, after having challenged us not to freak out when life is throwing some pretty bad stuff at us, he says to this church at Philippi, "I rejoiced in the Lord greatly that now at last your care for me has flourished again, though you surely did care, but you lacked the opportunity." Then verse 11, "Now Not that I speak in regard to need. And here it comes. For I've learned in whatever state I am to be content. I know how to be abased, and I know how to abound. Everywhere and in all things I have learned both to be full and to be hungry, both to abound and to suffer need. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And then if you look at verse 19, and my God shall supply all your need according to his riches and glory in Christ Jesus. Now, if you're going to live beyond your means in the right way, it's going to involve three basic concepts. Let me share those with you. The first concept is this: learn to be content. Learn to be content. Then experience life in the extremes. You have to come to that place where you're facing, dealing with, enduring, experiencing life in the extremes. And thirdly, you have to operate from a different vantage point. So you totally have to function beyond the normal. So let's go back to verse 11. So here's Paul talking to this church, and he says, you guys have really helped me. You provided me with some help that you didn't have opportunity to do before. Maybe you didn't have the means, but you've come through and you've blessed me. But I want you to know, he says to them, that I've learned something. Look at the text. I have learned. I've learned to be content. Now, that says a whole lot. That says I've gone through a process. I've gone through a bunch of experiences, and I've learned something by what I've gone through. I've learned how to live beyond my means. And it's kind of tricky, but he says, here's how I did it. And I think the key to learning to be content is navigating your circumstances. And secondly, mastering your attitude. He says, I have learned. And the verb tense here means, well, I sort of went into this school and graduated. I've been thrown into all of these situations, and I've come through it with a degree. I've come through the school of hard knocks, and it's left a few scars, left a few bruises, left a few bumps, but it's also left me with a grasp of how to handle certain things. And I have learned. Now, that's a hard process. I have learned. But what have I learned? I've learned to be. What have you learned to be? I've learned to be content. Now, there are two ways when you navigate through all kinds of circumstances and you come to master your attitude. Two ways of facing the junk in your life. Two ways of facing everything that comes at you. One, you can use basic human philosophy, or secondly, you can use a spiritual approach. Now, basic human philosophy would say, like the Stoics. Paul was aware of the Stoics in his day. The Stoics were a group of people who lived by this philosophy. Well, whatever happens, just roll with it. Just impassively endure, because the gods might be angry or maybe not. They may exist, they may not. But whatever happens, just let it roll on you. Whatever will be, will be. And just deal with it and calmly accept whatever trash rolls into your life. And Paul is not saying that. He's not saying be a Christian stoic, be Christianly passive. He's saying, no. I have learned, meaning I've been engaged in a process. I've been paying attention. Now, we've all been to school, and we all know that if you sit in the classroom and you go to sleep, you don't learn anything. But if you're paying attention, there's a chance you're going to pick up something you need. If you're not looking, listening, watching, and responding, you don't get anything. You don't learn. You don't learn. You're as dumb when you walk out of class as you were when you went to class. Paul says, I'm not so dumb anymore. I'm not so naive. I have learned. Now, I'm not going to take a human approach to this. I'm going to take a supernatural approach. He says, I've learned in whatever state I'm in. Now, this whatever is a huge word. I love this word because it's not a que sera word. It's I've just learned in whatever comes my way, whatever I'm getting hit with, I've learned to handle it from a different perspective. I'm all about soul sufficiency. I'm about understanding that whatever's coming, I have learned to be content. Now, to be content means to say, it's enough. I've got what I need to do what I need to do. There's a certain independence in this, a certain detachment that says, okay, here it comes. I see it coming again. It's rolling my way. I step back. I look at it and say, I can live above that. And there are many times with many things that come at us, we have to step back, step up, look at it, see it for what it is, and deal with it. I've learned in whatever state I'm in. Now, he's going to define different kinds of states of being, different experiences here in just a minute. But whatever is going on with me, I can step back, step up, look at it and go, I don't have to get dragged down with what's happening to me. I can be sufficient. I can be independent of it. So something happens, and I'll find my satisfaction in the Lord. I have learned to be content. So whatever is going on, these are the great whatevers. One of my favorite preachers, teachers, was the president of Dallas Seminary at one time. He said these words, "Words can never adequately convey the incredible impact of attitude toward life, our attitude toward our lives. The longer I live, the more convinced I become that life is 10% what happens to us and 90% how we respond." And Paul is saying, I've changed my attitude. I'm managing my attitude as I'm dealing with my circumstances. And the way I manage it is I step back and I've learned to be sort of detached from them, not dependent on whatever, but independent of whatever. And so I calm down. I let it go. And I'm able to handle it. Not only must I learn to be content, but Paul goes on to say I have to experience life in the extremes. So go to verse 12. I know how to be abased, and I know how to abound. And everywhere, in all things, I have learned both to be full and to be hungry, to abound and to suffer need. If you notice the text, he uses a lot of pronouns. What pronoun? He's not saying you got to learn, this is what you'll do. He's saying this has been me. This is what I've gone through. So it's very, very personal. I have learned in whatever state I'm in, I've learned to be content. I know how. I've learned. I can do all things. So it's a very personal approach to what's going on. He's saying this is the school I've been in. And I'm learning something very profound. So here are the extremes. I've learned to go from nothing to everything. I don't like this part. I know how to be abased, meaning I know how to be humbled. That means you've been here, and now all of a sudden you're here. You've had a lot, now you got nothing. You go from this extreme of nothing to everything. Now the word abased here means something physical. Maybe you had a house you wanted, the car you wanted, the money you wanted. You had the health you wanted. You had the food you wanted to do the things you wanted. But now you have physical limitations. He says, I've been in times in my life where I've had physical limitations and I could not be or do the things I wanted to do because it just wasn't there. I know how to be abased. Now the word I know here is a word that says, again, I've been to school in this. And I got a degree in losing it and gaining it, having it and not having it. I've been literally humbled. I've been abased. Ooh, that's a tough word. Then he says, and I know how to abound. These are contrasting words. So here to here. Now, when you get to the bottom, you feel like I can't fall any further to the bottom. Well, there are moments you feel like, man, I'm on top of the world. And being on top of the world is a great feeling. But there's a whole lot of stuff in between being at the very bottom and feeling at the very top. And Paul's saying, I just want to let you know, in the school I've been in, I've had to enjoy everything. I've had to experience all this, from having nothing to having everything. I've been humbled. Well, then he says, I know how to go from full to hungry. I have learned both. Well, let me back up. I know how to abound in everywhere and in all things. Now that's comprehensive. That doesn't leave much out. I know how to abound in everywhere and in all things I have learned. Now you won't notice this in your English Bible, but the first word that he used for learned in verse 11 is a different Greek word from the word he uses here. In the first word, it was just a basic, go to school and you learn stuff kind of word. I've learned this by my experience. But this word essentially means I've gone through an initiation process. I've been thrown into a very special school. I've been in the special ops school of learning tough lessons. And I've learned a secret. I have learned a secret, he's saying, both to be full and to be hungry. So imagine that. You go from full to hungry, meaning I've lived high and I've lived low. I've been to the place in my life where I couldn't make ends meet. In fact, I couldn't even find the ends if I could meet them, right? You've been in those places where it's like, whoa, where's that end? It's gone. Where's that end? It's gone. And you're stuck out there somewhere in the universe saying, I can't make emotional ends meet, financial ends meet, family ends meet. I can't pull it together. I got nothing to give. Everywhere and in all things, I've learned a secret. I've learned a secret, both to be full and to be hungry, both to abound. Second time he uses that word. And, this is the word I don't like, to suffer need. None of us wants to suffer. And often when we do suffer need, you don't have the finances you need. You don't have the health. You can't get healing. You can't get enough. You're in those crises of contrast and extremes. It's hard to live like that. And when we do suffer need, it's very easy for us to say, well, since I am suffering a need, God must be bad today. Let me ask you this question. It's a fair question. What would it take for you to walk away from Jesus? I can trust God if. I will walk away from God if. If I suffer a certain level of need, is that what it takes for me to walk away? If I go through the loss of something or someone, that's it, that's for me. Let's put it all in perspective. What's the chance, except that the rapture of the church takes place at any time, what's the chance you're going to get out of this alive? This is a scientific question. It's a very difficult question. Ponder over it carefully. It'd be hard to come up with an answer. All right, let me give you the math on it. There's a 100% chance you're not going to get out of this life alive unless the rapture takes place. So what that says is, sooner or later, I'm going to be lost to those I love. I'm going to lose those I love. I'm going to lose someone. I'm going to lose something. I'm going to lose my health. I'm going to lose my mental sharpness. I'm going to suffer need. I'm going to go through a time in my life when I don't have all the stuff I want, the people I want, the things I need. So what do I take from that? If I lose something, does that mean I give up on the Lord? Sooner or later, over and over, you and I are challenged to say, well, I can no longer trust God because, boom, fill in the blank. And Paul is saying, look, I've learned something. I've been initiated into this secret. And in this secret, I've learned to be full and to be hungry. I've learned to have everything I feel like I want, everything I feel like I need, when I need it, as I need it. But I've also learned to suffer need. Now, look, I don't know what you got in your bank account, but every one of you can stand to lose $1, right? And you go, oh man, I lost a $10 bill today, or I lost a $20 bill today, I lost a $50 bill today. And to the extent of your loss, you're not feeling anything. And then all of a sudden there's a pressure point. I'm feeling it. This is pinching me. This is hurting me. Or you hear someone in your family get sick, and you go, ooh, that's bad news. But it's not pushing you so hard because it's just, at this point, it's possibly bad news. But as the badness of the news increases, you get increasingly more uncomfortable. You begin to suffer the sense I'm going to lose something or someone and I can't fix it. Paul's saying, I've been there. I've been in all of this. I've been from full to hungry. I've had everything I wanted, and I've fallen behind. And so I have learned means that I can go back to a moment when I got initiated through the school of hard knocks, through the difficult process of living my life. Paul Reiser, MD, wrote these words. He said, some point in life, we must ask ourselves, is contentment created internally, or is it the result of how things are going? If your joy in the Lord is dependent on how good things are going as you personally define them, you're going to find yourself in a whole lot of personal trouble. You're going to have some mental anguish and some spiritual anguish going on if that's where you are mentally. So you learn to be content. You experience life in the extremes because life is full of extremes. It really is. Good days, bad days. You're in, you're out, you're up, you're down, you're back, you're forth, you're here, you're there. Life is full of extremes. And as Christians, we have to embrace that reality and say, on any given day, things are going to change. The barometer goes up, the barometer goes down. It's warm, it's cold, it's hot, it's cold, it's miserable, it's awesome, it's wonderful, it's despicable. But what do we take from that? We step back from that and say, I can be content no matter what comes. Whatever comes, I realize my gauge is not what comes. And my whatever approach is not based upon how well people are treating me, how well the day is going, what's going on in my world. It's something more profound than that. There's a secret to all of this. There's a secret to living beyond your means. And it is this: you operate from a different vantage point. What is a different vantage point? Well, he goes on to say, I have learned both to be full and to be hungry, to abound and to suffer need. And then here comes 4:13. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. What things? Now, let me assure you, you cannot walk out in front of a bus and say, I can do this through Christ. I can sit in front of a bus and it won't run over me. Not likely. I can jump off the edge of a building and I won't get hurt. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. No, not so much. He's not talking about that. Some people use this verse and say, the way I'm going to win athletic events, the way I'm going to prosper financially is I'm going to do it through Christ. He's like my lucky charm. I just kind of have my Jesus thought and I rub my Jesus thought and go, I can do it, I can do it, I can do it through Jesus. I can do it, I can do it. That's not what this is all about. Paul is saying, I can live life in the extremes. Facing whatever comes at me, I can learn from all of that and function in all of that, with all of that, above all of that, through this secret, Christ. I do it through Christ. So, what does that look like? Well, it looks like this. My experiences prepare me to do all things through Christ. Any and every. So whatever the contrasts in my life are, my cooperation with Jesus initiates me in a process. I paid attention. I've learned that there's something bigger going on. And so I'm cooperating with Jesus in what He's throwing at me. And Christ's power simply enables me. I can do all things. That all things is the same as whatever in verse 11. So what are your whatevers? You fill in the blank. I can do all blank. What are you going to put in the blank? I can do what? I can get through this physical challenge. I can get through this disease. I can get through it. It doesn't say I'll always be healed through it. I'll always prosper in it. You may be on the difficult swing. You're humbled. It's tough. It's difficult, and you're there for a long time. It's not like being on a swing set. When we were kids on a swing set, you go forward, you go woohoo, and all of a sudden you're about to go back. You go woohoo, and in the between the woohoos, it's kind of scary, right? So it's not saying you're just gonna go forward. Oh well, enough of that. Back you go to the other way. Sometimes it's woohoo, and you're suspended. That's the way life is. Life suspends you. Sometimes in the hard moments, the difficult moments, the humbling moments, the abased moments. Christ's power, though, is what gets me through. He says, I can do all this through Christ who strengthens me. Now, the word strengthen means to infuse. It means to put something in something. So His power, His strength, His wisdom, whatever, infuses me as I'm facing the all things, the whatever things going on in my life. And that's where I have to trust that wisdom. There's a story told about a little boy who was out in his sandbox in the backyard, and there was a big rock, and in that sandbox probably was a feature of the sandbox, but this kid didn't like it. He just wanted that rock out of his sandbox. So he's huffing and puffing and pushing and pulling. He's not making much progress. His dad's watching out the window. And so he walks out in the backyard and looks at his boy huffing and puffing over this rock that he wanted out of the way. And he said, "Son, what's going on?" He said, "Well, I can't do it. I just can't get this rock out." "Are you sure?" I know it. I just can't do it." The dad says, "Have you used all the strength available to you?" "Oh, yes, I have, and I can't do it." And the dad said, "You haven't asked me for help. You haven't asked me for help. If you'd asked me, I'd come out and help you lift the rock, get it out of the way." And there's something that's so basic to the Christian life that I'm up against something and I say, "I can't do it." Well, what do I do? What we learned in the previous passage last week was, I go ask for help. And it's not always so complicated. There's no deep initiation secret that says, if you learn these 14 secret processes, then Jesus will step in and help. And Jesus is not a lucky charm, as I've said. He's not a talisman. He's not a genie in a bottle, and I rub the bottle 3 or 4 or 5 or 100 times, and out pops Jesus and says, "Master, what do you want?" That's not the way it works. And so, I come to Christ. And look at verse 19. "And He'll supply all your needs according to His riches and glory." God's got enough for what I need, when I need it, as I need it. When I'm having everything I think I want, I'm certainly not getting everything I need. So He sends me here, sends me back there. And in that process, I learn what matters. I learn what's real. I learn so much in the process. So where's He got you? What's going on with you? Well, let me close with this story. And it's an amazing story that puts this all in practice. There was a guy who had a friendship with a fellow that he'd come to treasure, come to cherish. And this guy's name is Tim Brown. And Tim Brown had met this young man as a college student and loved the guy. He's just one of these winsome, handsome, tall, curly-headed guy. Just seemed to have the world by the hand, and everything he did just went well. He goes to college. He comes out. It's all awesome. He gets a job. He's rising through the ranks in this career. And then, well, one day, Tim Brown was sitting in his office, and he gets a call from this young man named Tim Vanderveen. And as a friend, Tim was like, "Man, I can't wait to talk to you. What's going on? You know, what's been happening in your life?" He says, "How are you doing?" And Tim responded by saying, "I'm not doing so good." And so Tim Brown says, "Well, what's up? What's up with you?" And so Tim Brown said that his friend, Tim Vanderveen, says back, "Well, I'm in the hospital in Grand Rapids, and I got the flu or something. My folks are out of the country." And so I said, "Well, I'm going to be in Grand Rapids later today. Maybe I can stop and see you. Would that be okay?" And his friend said, "Yeah, I'd like that a lot." And so by the time he gets to Tim, the doctors had already gotten to Tim, and it wasn't the flu. It was leukemia. And things were looking pretty grim. And that began a 3-year journey with cancer. It was a tough battle, a difficult battle. And so if you fast forward to room 5255 at the Butterworth Hospital, called Spectrum Health, I guess later on, this pastor walks into the room, and his friend Tim is lying on his side. Things are not looking very good. I had him positioned and had a pillow positioned with his skinny little legs. His hair wasn't curly anymore because it's gone. No hair on his legs, no hair on his head. All of his hair is gone. And he said there wasn't enough energy for Tim to look at him. So this pastor gets down on one knee, looks him in the face, and he says to him, "Hey, Tim." And Tim took a minute to respond. There was a long, awkward pause, he describes. And this pastor said, I've been a pastor 20 years, and I still don't know what to say sometimes. But the other Tim breaks the silence, and he said, "I've learned something." Well, this pastor says, I know this much. You don't trifle with the words of someone who's dying, of someone who's in a difficult situation. You just listen carefully. And so I said, "Tell me, partner, what have you learned?" And here's this sick young man, and he says, I've learned that life is not like a VCR. Now, some of you may remember what a VCR is. And he says, this pastor responds by saying, oh, I didn't get that any more than you're getting that. I mean, what do you mean life is not a VCR? So I said, hey, I don't get it. What do you mean? And he says back to me, it's not like a VCR. You can't fast forward the bad parts. Long pause. I'm thinking to myself, where does he get this stuff? And then he interrupts the silence again to say, but I have learned that Jesus Christ is in every frame. And right now, that's just enough. So you think about that young man's life. Jesus was in that frame the day he was born. He was in the frame when he learned to walk. He was in the frame on his first day of school. He was in the frame when he graduated from high school. He was in the frame when he went to college. He was in the frame when he graduated. That Jesus was in every frame in his life. He was there when he felt sick and he had the flu, and then he was there in the frame when he heard his cancer. And Jesus is in the frame in that moment. He's rolled over on his side and he can hardly talk. Jesus is in that frame. And the point is this: Jesus is in every frame of my life. And so I learn from those moments, and I step back and I live from a different vantage point. I understand their extremes. There are going to be moments for every one of us when it's an awesome moment, it's an awful moment. It's a good moment. It's a tragic moment. But that is the whole scope of living, that we learn that whatever it is I got to do, whatever is thrown in my way, I can do it. Because I'm infused with strength from the outside in. I can't conjure it up. I can't stir it up. I can't reach down by my bootstraps and go, I can do this. I can only do this because Christ helps me. So what does that look like? So you find yourself moving from here to there, living beyond your means. Where does it start? I think it starts with a simple request. Jesus, I can't do this. And I don't want to do this. And it's not fair. I don't understand. And I don't know why. And I don't like it. And I'm not so sure I'm on a strong level of trust right now because you're hurting me. I don't like this. I'm suffering. What do you do with that? I think it's something so profoundly simple. Help me. Help me do it. And then He gives us what surpasses all understanding. He gives what we need when we need it, as we need it. And it may not be right then, that second. I may be waiting on it. I'm rolled over on my side, suffering, and then I get it. Jesus is in every frame of my life, my living and my dying, my loving and my hating. He's in the frames of my life when I'm going through all of the contrasts. When I succeed as a parent and I fail as a parent. I succeed as a husband and I fail as a husband. When I succeed as a pastor and I fail as a pastor. When I succeed as a human being and I fail. I'm learning I can emotionally get through it, spiritually get through it, because He will give me what I need as I need it. And it's according to His riches. That's what it says. So I figure He's not going to go bankrupt. So it may be that you have to say, Jesus, if you don't mind selling a cow or two today, I need some help. I need some financial help. Or if you don't mind, I need a little comfort. If you don't mind, you just tell Him what you need. And then wait for it.